Good evening, everyone. The January 25th first meeting of the Community Commission for Public Safety and Accountability is called to order at 6:40 p.m. We'll begin with the call of the roll. Commissioner Brown,
Present.
Commissioner Drivers, President, Commissioner Gomez, Commissioner Loizen, Commissioner Nellis, Commissioner Terry, Commissioner Troncoso.
Present.
With 6 out of 7 members of the Community Commission for Public Safety and Accountability present, we have a quorum and can conduct the commission's business. The next item of business is public comment. If you would like to share something related to the commission's work on public safety and accountability, you have a few options. You may speak at a public meeting. You can also submit public comment in writing by emailing your comment to Community Commission Public Comment at cityofchicago.org, or you can bring a copy of your comment to the commission's public meeting and hand it to someone on the commission or on the commission staff. People who wanted to speak during the public comment period tonight were asked to submit their names in writing earlier tonight. Names were then drawn at random by a member of the commission staff. Speakers will be called in the order in which their name is drawn. If your name is called to offer public comment, we ask that you approach the microphone and line up in the order in which you are called. When it's your turn to speak, please say your name and then spell your name and then offer your comments. Each speaker will have 2 minutes. We have allotted a total of 20 minutes for public comment. I believe we said we're doing virtual first. Our first speaker is speaking virtually, Amy Huamani. Please forgive me if I am mispronouncing your name. That person here? Oh, these are emails. Okay, sorry. Carol Parnell, our next speaker, Carol Parnell.
Hi, good evening. I'm here. Are you all able to hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, well, thank you. Good evening to everyone. So I am Carol Parnell. That's Carol, and that's Parnell. I am a community member of the Edgewater neighborhood and newly involved with One North Side Police Accountability Campaign. So I'm thrilled to have the opportunity to speak before all of you here this evening. At the December 2023 meeting, the topic of racially disparate and harmful perpetual traffic stops was raised, and the superintendent Snellen did express support for reducing the excessive stops and focusing on roadways and public safety. While the superintendent had expressed support, community members and advocates of the One North Side and the Free to Move Coalition want to see the Community Commission develop a policy that addresses how officers use perpetual traffic stops. The Community Commissions is perfectly positioned, of course, to develop a policy for CPD on this topic and to oversee its implementation. I can't even express enough the number of times that I've heard young Black males say to me that they were stopped by the police for no apparent reason. I've even had at some times in my life, some of my young family members who are males, they're striving to try and live honest lives, and they've told me the same thing, some of them have. We have to get to a point where we stop looking at our young Black males from the outside and get to know them more on a personal level. After all, I do know, according to the article 2-80-030, the commission's purpose is to ensure department policies and practices are rooted in community needs and public input, and to help increase transparency and public input into department operations, policies, and performance. And you also provide Chicago residents with meaningful opportunities to help shape department policies and practices that affect community members' lives. So the reason why I'm here speaking on behalf of One North Side is based on this. We want to try and do something about the perpetual
Thank you.
traffic stops.
That is your time.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Carlton Myers.
Hello? Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you. Please offer your comment.
Thank you. Okay. Good evening. My name is Carlton T. Mayers II, Esquire. I am a national public safety and policing reform expert. I'm the founder and owner of Main Strategic Solutions LLC, and also the CEO of Main Strategic Solutions LLC, where I work with communities around the country on essentially solving public safety challenges by working together with equity and inclusivity, which also includes working on police accountability. Now, something else I do is I'm also the criminal justice chair for the Chicago West Side branch of NAACP. And I used to direct NAACP National's criminal justice reform program out of Baltimore back when Ben Jelps was president. Now, I recently wrote an op-ed that was published in the Chicago Tribune about a month, maybe a few months ago, focused on how the Safety Act, which passed into law in 2021, the policing reforms in it, there is language within the Safety Act that allows for civilian oversight within Illinois, which includes the Commission for Community Public Accountability, the CCPSA, and COPA, and the police board, etc., including the Inspector General's office, the Office of Inspector General, to all have the ability to directly engage with the LSB, the Illinois Law Enforcement Standards Training and Standards Board, who's responsible for licensing of all law enforcement in the state of Illinois. So what that means is that you can file complaints directly with them for specific offenses that officers might commit in the state of Illinois. For instance, any and all felonies and certain misdemeanors, most of which are either sexual in nature, fraudulent in nature, or violent in nature. You can report that directly to a LSB, and they will initiate what they call the decertification process, meaning that they can take away that officer's
Thank you, sir. That's
license.
your time. Thank you for your comment.
Okay, thank you.
Our next speaker is Jay Darnell Jones. I apologize. Not present. And our only in-person speaker today, District Council Member Elizabeth Rockford.
Hello, Commission. Elizabeth Rochford. Welcome to the 17th District. I hope you're back often. I just want to say that I was disappointed in the December meeting that we didn't go through the goals that you had for the superintendent, for COPA, and the police board, and sort of explain to us how those organizations did on last year's goals. So I'm hoping that, I know we're going to be addressing goals today for the coming year, but I hope there's either something in writing or something that we can look at to really know how they did on last year's goals, and so that way we can look at holding you all accountable for holding them accountable. And so if that's possible, I hope there's some kind of a report that we would be able to read about last year's goals. Thank you.
Thank you. The next order of business is approval of the minutes. Before today's meeting, draft minutes on the commission's meeting held December 11th. Oh, sorry. That concludes our public comment period. The next order of business is approval of the minutes. Before today's meeting, draft minutes of the commission's meeting held on December 11, 2023 were shared with all commissioners. Are there any corrections to the draft minutes that have been circulated? If there are no corrections, I move to approve the minutes of the commission's meeting held on December 11, 2023. I have moved to approve the minutes of the commission's December 11th meeting. Commissioner Terry has seconded. Is there any debate on the motion? Hearing none, we'll now move to a vote. Those in favor of approving the minutes from the December 11th meeting, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. The minutes are approved. The next order of business is approval of the commission's 2024 regular meeting schedule. Before today's meeting, a draft schedule was shared with all commissioners. Are there any corrections to the draft schedule that has been circulated? If there are no corrections, in accordance with the Illinois Open Meetings Act, I move to approve the commission's 2024 yearly schedule. Been seconded by Commissioner Terry. I've moved to approve the 2024 yearly schedule. Is there any debate on the motion? Hearing none, we'll now move to a vote. All those in favor of approving the 2024 schedule, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it, and the motion carries, and the 2024 schedule is approved and will be published on the Commission's website. Our next order of business will be the approval of a series of closed meetings related to appointments. Over the next several months, the Commission will be engaging in a process of selection of candidates for publicly held positions dictated by the ordinance. This includes nominating candidates to fill vacancies on the police board. Section 2C3 of the Illinois Open Meetings Act allows the Commission to meet in closed session to consider the following subject: the selection of a person to fill a public office as defined by this act, including a vacancy in a public office when the public body is given the power to appoint under law or ordinance, or the discipline, performance, or removal of the occupant of a public office when the public body is given the power to remove the occupant under law or ordinance. Section 2A of the Act authorizes the Commission to take a vote to hold a series of closed meetings over the course of not more than 3 months from the day of the vote, and only for the purposes cited under Section 2C3. I move to hold a series of closed meetings related to the appointment of police board members and other appointments as necessary to take place for the maximum period allowable as authorized by Section 2C3 of the Open Meetings Act. Is there a second?
Second.
I have moved and Commissioner Terry has seconded to hold a series of closed meetings to take place for the maximum period allowable as authorized by Section 2C3 of the Open Meetings Act. Commissioner Terry has seconded it. Is there any debate on this motion? Hearing none, we will now move to a vote. Those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it, and the motion passes. The Commission will hold a series of closed meetings to take place for the maximum time period allowable as authorized by Section 2C3 of the Illinois Open Meetings Act. Our next order of business will be the consideration and approval of the goals for the COPA Chief Administrator, the Police Board President, and the Chicago Police Superintendent. First, Commissioner Terry will provide an update on the process and where we are at this point.
A very important part of the Commission's work is dealing with oversight responsibility to set strategic goals and expectations every year for the leaders of the 3 entities it oversees. That is the Police Superintendent, the COPA Chief Administrator, and the Police Board President. The ordinance that created the Commission says that the Commission must set goals at the beginning of each year, and then at the end of the year, do a performance assessment where we look at how much progress they have made towards meeting the goals that we set. So I'm going to provide a timeline of where we are in the process. So on December 1st of 2023, when the superintendent, the COPA Chief, and the Police Board President all submitted their draft goals. During December, commissioners reviewed the draft goals, met with the 3 leaders, and draft proposed goals. At the end of December, after holding discussions with each agency, the Commission gave the Superintendent, the Chief Administrator, and the Police Board President the Commission's proposal for the goals for the next year. CPD, COPA, and the Police Board then had around 2 weeks to propose changes to what the Commission had laid out. The Commission has taken the input along with the input submitted by the public to draft final goals, which we will discuss today. The final goals will be available on our website at the beginning of February. This is a mandated process and is the first step in this toward evaluating each agency head at the end of the year. These evaluations will be based on standards established within the final goals. As part of the year-end assessment, the Commission will do a written evaluation of the progress the Superintendent, the COPA Chief, and Police Board President have made towards reaching the goals.
Thank you, Commissioner Terry. We'll begin by calling Commissioners Brown and Loizon to discuss goal setting for the Chief Administrator of COPA, or the Civilian Office of Police Accountability.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Before we discuss the goals, myself and Commissioner Brown want to thank Chief Administrator Andrea Kirsten and her team for their collaboration during this process. We are happy to report that COPA made great progress on the goals set in 2023, and we look forward to continuing that momentum into 2024. The first goal we set for 2024 is creating consistency in disciplinary recommendations. The lack of consistency in disciplinary recommendations is an issue across the police accountability infrastructure. We understand that all cases turn on their facts, but we hope that there will not be disparities in disciplinary recommendations for similar conduct with officers with similar backgrounds. We believe that police officers, as well as complainants, need to know what to expect. Discipline should be more predictable. To have greater consistency, the police board, COPA, and CPD all need to work closely and collaboratively to ensure that the disciplinary process functions as effectively and as efficiently as possible. And the commission strongly encourages all of those entities to work towards that goal. With respect to COPA, to achieve consistency in disciplinary recommendations internally, COPA will look at developing more internal guidance and training for their staff. The second goal is continued timeliness in closing cases. That's a topic we've discussed a lot over the past year, both in our meetings one-on-one with COPA and our public meetings. Through their timeliness initiative that was part of the 2023 goals, COPA has reduced the number of open cases that have long plagued the agency. COPA will continue working to conclude all investigations in a timely manner, and they will establish metrics to evaluate and improve the timeliness of all COPA operations, including investigations. They will do this by developing programs that expedite the resolution of COPA complaints while serving the interests of all stakeholders. The third goal we identified was improving transparency and communication. Transparency is of the utmost importance to gain public trust in the police disciplinary process. COPA will continue to increase efforts to provide accessible, transparent communication, both internally and externally, about all aspects of their work. COPA will do this through a successful People's Academy, which has been a great success over the past year, and by identifying additional media opportunities. They will also increase their capacity around a trauma-informed approach to communications to the complainant, victims and impacted families, as well as CPD members regarding investigations and outcomes. I'm going to turn it over to Commissioner Brown now to talk about the remaining goals.
Thank you. The fourth goal is youth engagement. Youth are often overlooked in the police accountability infrastructure. Engaging more youth is an important part of increasing transparency and accountability. COPA will develop and implement paid internship programs. In addition, COPA will also work with external stakeholders to leverage programs designed to engage youth and emerging adults from neighborhoods across the city of Chicago in public safety and accountability. The fifth and final goal is equity. Identifying patterns of inequity that underlie cases of police misconduct and recommending policy changes are critical strategies for COPA to achieve its organizational mission. At the same time, focusing on internal equity and wellness goals is crucial to improving COPA's operations. COPA will develop personnel and operational structures to assess and improve compliance with COPA's racial equity goals. COPA will also continue to develop and assess programs that build trust and achieve equitable and restorative investigative resolutions. And COPA will continue to prioritize organizational wellness to create a culture of openness, trust, diversity, and equality. Again, I want to thank Chief Kirsten and her team for their work and their collaboration. The Commission appreciates the opportunity for our continued collaboration on improving public safety and accountability in Chicago.
Thank you, Commissioners. Are there any questions or comments from the Commission on the proposed goals? Commissioner Terry.
Just a point of clarity, because this was just brought up in public comment, how often will we be giving updates about our check-ins with the COPA and all of the entities so that people are just aware of the timeline with that for updates?
So I think our benchmarks are set quarterly. So we will have an opportunity to provide updates quarterly. You know, if it's on the agenda and it fits into our timetable as commissioners. But I would also add that we do meet with COPA very regularly. So if there's anything specific that needs to be reported before those quarterly benchmarks, we generally are in a good position to do that.
Yeah, and I guess to comment further, I heard that in public comment as well. I think it would be smart to update the public quarterly. I don't know if it's something that should be posted, but at the minimum at our meetings every quarter, we should add that to the agenda.
We have done that at points in the past year, so we can certainly continue to do that. One thing I also wanted to acknowledge is that we have heard back from some of the agencies that our timing related to evaluations and goals is difficult. So we want to say we've heard that, and we will be working on whether there are other possibilities for timing in terms of when the evaluations are due and when the goals are due. So we just want you all to know that we've heard that from all of you.
We're not voting, but I second that.
We'll now give COPA Chief Administrator Andrea Kirsten 5 minutes to discuss the goals and the process and to indicate whether or not she accepts and commits to the goals. Chief Kirsten. Chief Administrator Kirsten, sorry. It is cold. Anybody else cold? I'm like freezing. Oh man. I'll have to put my coat on.
Good evening and hello to commission members and commission president and neighbors. This is my home neighborhood, and so excited to be here in the 17th district. Excited to be in this space where I've actually taken Irish dance lessons, if you can believe that. But anyway, appreciate the opportunity to be here and talk about COPA's goals. Yes. I don't know, is that better or should I pull it out all the way? Okay, excited to be here this evening and talk about COPA's goals. Without sort of belaboring the points, I want to first and foremost thank the commission, and particularly Commissioners Loyson and Brown, as well as President Driver, for your continued partnership. This has not always been a perfect process. We certainly haven't always seen eye to eye on the details of how the goals get done and set, but I think we are all aligned in the ultimate mission of improving the work of my agency and the broader accountability system. So thank you. With respect to these 5 goals, they really, or these 5 themes for our goals of consistency, timeliness, transparency, youth engagement, and equity, they hit across a wide swath of all of the work that we do at COPA. In order to have specific, tangible things that we can deliver, we did want to drill down on some of those benchmarks, if you will, and I thought they were adequately expressed by both Commissioner Loyson and Commissioner Brown. The one thing that I think is really important, and I'll spend any amount of time here tonight talking about, is really this concept of timeliness, particularly in light of the fact that in the midst of our goal setting process, and the FOP contract, collective bargaining agreement, was agreed upon that set an ultimate time limit for all COPA investigations and all disciplinary investigations of 18 months. So I am here standing before you as the Chief Administrator to say that we are committed to meeting that timeline. When the contract was signed and went into effect, COPA had, back in December of 2023, COPA had 263 open investigations that were over 18 months old. We have worked steadily since that time and have around 100 investigations remaining, with a few more days to continue concluding those, and they are all nearing that posture. But what is perhaps most important, besides the hard work of my staff that led to that progress, is really the work that has been going on for us as an agency over the last 2 years to ensure that we can remain timely in all of these concluding investigations going forward. Residents of the city of Chicago that file complaints with our office, police officers who are the subject of these investigations, just simply deserve faster resolution so that everyone can move forward. The lessons can be learned if there was misconduct that occurred, or that information can be communicated back to community members when things weren't misconduct. And so we really are, out of all of these goals, I think the timeliness and the consistency of the work that we do are the things that I'm most proud of, the progress we have already made, and remain very steadfastly committed to continuing to make progress in that space. I am 2 years into a 4-year term as Chief Administrator. And when I took this position, I was very direct in the fact that I knew timeliness was something that needed to be addressed. That hasn't changed. We haven't wavered from that. And we are finally on a path where we have historically low caseloads, manageable work for each of our investigative staff, and the promise of being able to deliver and fulfill the obligations that we have as an agency. So I think these goals really set out a great path for us, and I look forward to continued partnership with the Commission as we reach them.
You mind taking the question? Yeah.
Hi, Chief, can you just elaborate a little bit on that FOP contract? There's the 18-month deadline, which I think it's extremely important to note that the 18-month deadline is imposed by the contract. However, it is a deadline that internally COPA had set for themselves in a goal that they were trying to reach. And so I think, you know, kudos to you to having your finger on the pulse of what the right time amount is. We've had conversations in the past where you've indicated that exceeding that 18-month deadline makes cases more vulnerable to consequences in arbitration. Based on the FOP contract, are there any specific consequences that are delineated in that contract if your investigation exceeds 18 months? And could you explain how that's going to look in the future with this new limitation?
Sure. So as I understand the contract, and the Department of Law and other people that negotiated the contract may have slightly different versions of how this will work. But essentially for any misconduct investigation, whether COPA conducts it or the Bureau of Internal Affairs or the Office of Inspector General, all of those investigations must be completed within 18 months from the time the complaint was known or filed with our agency. And if that timeline or deadline is not met, officers in the arbitration process can file for essentially a timeliness hearing where there would have to be a showing of just cause essentially for why the 18-month deadline wasn't met. The contract itself does specify some of the potential reasons why an 18-month deadline might not be appropriate. Like if the conduct is criminal in nature, there have been times where particularly complex investigations, examples would be a complaint comes in as one act involving one officer, but further investigation reveals there were multiple incidents involving multiple officers. Those are things where the city, the department itself, the superintendent, COPA, we could all make arguments as to why an investigation justifiably took more than 18 months, but it would be up to an arbitrator to decide whether those arguments were persuasive. So the goal that we have is really to try to meet that deadline in as many of these cases as possible, because the consequences could be that there would be no ability to discipline an officer.
This may be
Oh, I just wanted to say thank you. I know you guys weren't really prepared for questions, but I thought it was important that everybody understand the consequence. So thanks.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I had a question. It's probably a question that's better for the Department of Law. But since you started bringing up the contract, I've been trying to figure out what this means in the contract where it says like police officers can now turn their body cameras off when they are like not doing something that's like police activity. And I guess it's perfectly fine if you don't want to interpret that, but that's a question that I've had since I saw the contract about what exactly that means. And there's also something in there that says like you can turn the camera off like as soon as the action is done, which is frankly a little bit scary to me because I feel like that's when the thing happens. So I was just wondering, do you know what that means?
So I don't think I'm in a position to interpret what the language of the contract means, and that's certainly better situated for the Department of Law. But what I can speak to are some of the principles in the consent decree that kind of run counter to what it appears, at least on my reading of that contract languages, meaning that the consent decree really wants to encourage robust transparency, particularly in the use of body-worn cameras. There's also open questions, I think, as to how the Illinois state law known as the Safety Act may or may not be implicated in some of those contracts, some of that contract language around body-worn cameras. So I look forward to the public discourse that I think we'll have to follow as the department learns how that contract may or may not be able to be applied.
Thank you. Thank you. Are there any other questions? Thank you so much.
If I might just say one more thing, and I'm sorry, it'll be quick. I just want to say that we currently have under 700 open cases in our agency, and you would have to go back decades in civilian oversight in the city to find caseloads that low. So for officers that feel like you haven't been heard, you don't know what's going on with your discipline case, complainants that feel like maybe you weren't listened to, this is changing. And we are going to deliver on these promises for all Chicagoans. So thank you.
Thank you. Is there a motion on the proposed goals for the COPA Chief Administrator?
In accordance with MCC 2-80-050E, I move to adopt the 2024 goals for the Chief Administrator of the Civilian Office of Police Accountability and deliver them to the Chief Administrator.
Commissioner Brown has moved to adopt the 2024 goals for COPA. Is there a second? Commissioner Brown has moved to adopt the 2024 goals for the Chief Administrator of the Civilian Office of Police Accountability, and it has been seconded by Commissioner Loizon. Is there any debate on the motion? Hearing none, we'll now move to a vote. Those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Are there any nays? The motion passes, and the goals for the 2024 goals for COPA Chief Administrator Curson have been approved. Next, Commissioners Loizon and Troncoso will discuss the goal-setting process for the police board.
Thank you, President Driver. I want to thank former Police Board President Guion Foreman for his service to the Police Board of over 12 years and for his collaboration during this process. The Commission will also like to metaphorically and physically welcome the new Police Board President, Kyle Cooper, to our meeting, who made the journey up here, and we're thankful for that, and also to recognize Vice President Paula Wolf in attendance as well. The Commission has enjoyed working with the entire Police Board team on last year's goals and creating new goals for 2024. The first goal we established is additional training of Police Board members. The Police Board will assess current training for members and determine whether to make any changes or additions. The second goal established is creating greater consistency in decisions. To create a uniform context for each decision without interfering with the critical component of individual board member autonomy in decision-making, Police Board members will complete training on how to assess different types of evidence, how to assess credibility of testimony, how to weigh evidence presented by witnesses, and how to apply the preponderance of the evidence standard. The third goal established is improved transparency. Greater transparency is critically important to improving accountability. The Police Board will create a separate section on the Police Board's website for all of its policy recommendations. These changes will also be announced at the Police Board's televised meetings. This will raise awareness and increase transparency. And Commissioner Loizon will discuss the next two goals.
The fourth goal we decided on is standardization of procedures. The police board president will discuss with representatives of the Office of Public Safety Administration, the Chicago Police Department, and CCPSA ways to increase and standardize the information provided to the board regarding appeals by applicants for the position of police officer who have been removed from eligibility due to the results of a background investigation. Police board leadership will also identify opportunities to improve how the information pertaining to each case is organized and how that information is relayed to police board members so that the cases can be adjudicated more quickly and accurately. The fifth goal is improving community engagement. The board staff will work with the CCPSA staff and other stakeholders as well to publicize the board's meetings and the work the board does to address issues and concerns raised by the public. The police board will provide a list of the types of stakeholder groups it plans to engage to the CCPSA. I also want to take this opportunity to thank former President Foreman for all of his work and to welcome President Cooper into his new role. We appreciate the opportunity for continued collaboration on improving public safety and accountability in Chicago.
Thank you, commissioners. Are there any questions or comments from the commission on the proposed goals?
I just wanted to make a comment. In December, I gave former President Foreman a hard time about these goals, and I want to acknowledge that and also say that I think these goals are solid and much better. So I thank you for all the work that you all did between December and now to bring these goals forward.
Just to add one thing in response to the question about reporting, since we discussed it with respect to COPA, one of the things that we did add to our goals this year is quarterly meetings with the police board so that we can discuss updates and information on how the goals are working out and just to make sure that we have improved communication between CCPSA and the police board. So we will be in a position to report on progress quarterly, as I indicated we would be for COPA as well.
Any other questions or comments on the proposed goals? Hearing none, we will now give Police Board President Kyle Cooper 5 minutes to discuss the goals and the process that went into it and to indicate whether or not he accepts and commits to the goals. President Cooper.
Thank you, commissioners. I would also particularly like to thank Commissioners Trancoso and Commissioner Loizon for their collaborative efforts and correspondence and communications with the police board over the last 2 months while we put together these goals. We found that the process has been a good working relationship with CCPSA. As Commissioner Brown indicated, there was some hard conversations that were had with President Foreman at a prior meeting as to the nature of the goals for 2024. And I can say that both President Foreman, myself, and Vice President Wolf, we took those concerns seriously along with our executive director, and we spent a significant amount of time thinking about the feedback that was provided by the commission and putting together goals that we thought were not only attainable, but in some ways were aspirational, and goals that we could meet. And especially given the turnover, myself being one of the new members of the board, along with other new members of the board that have joined within the last 6 to 8 months. And, the hope that there will be, with your efforts, some additional new members joining the board in the months to come, that we wanted to focus on making sure that myself and the new members of the board were fully up to date with all of the training that was required under the consent decree, but also up to date with respect to the relevant statutes and case law and procedures that govern the handling of police disciplinary cases. which is why we made that the #1 goal for us this year. In addition to making sure that the police board members were up to date with respect to the relevant training as to how to handle disciplinary cases, one of the things that we also wanted to make a point, especially given the ongoing, issue as to whether or not the police board will continue to hear disciplinary cases involving officers where there's a recommendation of termination or suspension for over a year, is to walk the talk when it comes to transparency. And so that means that we wanted to, one, extend and increase the level of public availability in terms of the meetings that the public will have to the police board, whether that's from posting a Twitter account that the police board is going to set up, or to blasting out our meetings to the public so that we have people from the public who will be able to attend the police board meetings. So that's, we really thank the commission's collaboration on those goals, and we look forward to implementing them in the years to come, because we think that the police board is the best forum for the public to be able to have insight into how serious disciplinary cases are decided in the city. And so we want to do our best to make sure that the public has the insight into that.
Thank you, President Cooper. Are there any questions from commissioners or comments?
Congratulations, President Cooper. Great to see you. So just really quickly, since you're new to this position, if you could just share any of sort of like the top 3 things that community needs to be aware of that's upcoming for the police board so that they can get engaged.
Thank you for that warm welcome and that comment. One of the things that I would like to make the community aware of is, as I've alluded to earlier, there is this ongoing issue that is percolating between the city council, where the city council has to decide whether or not to accept a recent arbitrator's ruling to have cases involving serious police misconduct, cases in which the officer may either be suspended for a year or terminated from the police force, whether or not that officer is allowed to have that case handled in private arbitration, or whether that case will still continue to come to the police board. I understand that there is going to be a committee hearing on that issue next week at the Committee on Workplace Development. So I would like to let the public know that that is something that they should, if they're so interested in, attend. After that committee meeting, there will likely be a full city council vote on the issue. And again, that is something that I would like to make the public aware of, to the extent that they're interested to attend in person or to view that meeting online, which they are able to do so. But in terms of what the police board does, we have public meetings every 3rd Thursday of the month that usually takes place around 7:30 at police headquarters on South Michigan Avenue. Next month in February, the meeting will take place on that last Thursday of the month. And all those meetings are posted on the police board's website. And so I'd encourage the public to turn to the police board's website and to attend the city council meetings involving the discussion as to whether or not the police board will continue to handle these cases of serious misconduct, as I think it's important that their voice is heard in this discussion.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from commissioners? Hearing none, thank you, President Cooper. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Is there a motion on the proposed goals for the police board?
In accordance with MCC 2-80-050E, I move to adopt the 2024 goals for the police board president and deliver them to the president.
Is there a second? Commissioner Troncoso has moved to adopt the 2024 proposed goals for police board president Kyle Cooper. It's been seconded by Commissioner Loizon. Is there any debate on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the goals for President Cooper and the police board, please signify by saying aye. Those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it and the motion carries. The 2024 goals for police board president Kyle Cooper have been adopted and will be delivered. Next, Commissioner Brown and I will discuss goal setting for the Superintendent of the Chicago Police Department. First, I'd like to thank Superintendent Snelling and his team for their collaboration during this goal-setting process. Commissioner Brown and I have had very productive conversations with the superintendent over the past several months as we attempted to establish these goals. Sincerely would like to thank not only yourself, but your team, Sarah Boyle, Dana O'Malley, your entire team have made themselves available to us. And yourself, I know it's a very difficult job running the second largest department in the country, but the fact that we've been able to meet with you and your team the amount of times that we have and come to this resolution, we're very appreciative of that. The first goal that we set for Superintendent Snelling is to articulate a crime-fighting strategy that is rooted in constitutional policing and supported by the community. We want to ensure that the superintendent directly addresses concerns about the overuse of policing tactics and that disproportionately impact Black and brown people, devastate communities, and reduce community trust and police legitimacy, and do not necessarily make communities safer. For example, the commission has had conversations with Superintendent Snelling about traffic stops and will be looking for progress on stops this year. All police officers must receive constitutional policing. All police officers must receive constitutional policing training. Policing actions must be guided and well articulated by community-informed strategies, and a strong feedback loop must be established. The second goal focuses on community policing and emphasizes that all police in the city of Chicago know how to engage with the community, and that every Chicago police officer is a community policing officer. Chicago has been without a comprehensive community policing approach for several years, and so this goal seeks two outcomes. One, a cultural shift to a more expansive approach toward community policing for all officers, and two, for the superintendent to develop a comprehensive policing plan. The third goal insists that the superintendent provide quality investigations and timely communication with victims and their families. This goal centers on strengthening the investigative process to ensure that every victim of crime is supported. The strategies associated with this goal include increasing personnel and resources dedicated to investigations and victim services. Now I will turn it over to Commissioner Brown to discuss the last three goals.
Thank you, President Driver. The fourth goal centers on member wellness and morale and states that the superintendent will improve member morale by building a comprehensive culture of wellness. The goal includes strategies that focus on improving facilities, include providing more transparent scheduling, and insisting on fair accountability outcomes. The fifth CPD goal is focused on leadership and insists that the superintendent provide quality leadership and build a leadership pipeline for the department. Because effective police leaders and managers are central to influencing and promoting culture change, the department needs to prioritize and implement systems to assess members' abilities and invest in those members who demonstrate the desired leadership traits. The sixth and final goal is centered on workforce allocation and insists that the superintendent effectively and efficiently manage department resources. The superintendent will undertake a comprehensive workforce allocation study, which will include an assessment of the current workforce. The workforce allocation study process will provide opportunities for the commissioners and district council members to play roles as stakeholders and as channels for public oversight on the study's features, the study's progress, and the ultimate design of an allocation plan. Again, President Driver and I want to thank Superintendent Snelling and his team for their collaboration in the goal-setting process.
Thank you, Commissioner Brown. Are there any questions, concerns, or comments from the commission on the proposed goals for Superintendent Snelling? Hearing none, I'd like to now invite Superintendent Snelling up to offer comments.
Good evening, everyone, and good evening to the commission. And thank you for having me here. First thing I'd like to do is thank President Driver and Commissioner Brown for the collaboration. I thought the process was very smooth. I think we came to some agreements on some things that are really important for the department and for our members moving forward. The goals that you mentioned are extremely important. And everything that we need to do to get to those goals starts with officer wellness. And the reason that it starts with officer wellness is because the officers that we're sending out into the community have to feel that we as a department and we as leaders care about them. We can't expect them to go out and perform the way that we want them to perform if we don't give them the tools to do so. And that starts with leadership. So if we as leaders aren't leading in a way that sets the example for our officers and what we expect from them, then we're failing our officers. So wellness is of the utmost importance. Now, I say that to say this. Our officers have been through a lot, especially over the past 3 years. Day off cancellations, not being able to see their families on a regular basis, and then going out into the field and seeing people on some of their worst days during some of the worst times in their lives. When those officers deal with these types of situations, if those officers are not well themselves, officers are not going to perform the way we need them to. And oftentimes they'll make mistakes, and mistakes that sometimes we can't take back. So we have to make sure that our officers are in the right situation. We have to set them up for success. Having said that, making sure that our officers have their days off, not canceled without notice, is something that I jumped right into once I took this position. And I can tell you that we have seen officers performing at a greater level. As a result of our officers and the work that they're producing right now, in the month of January, we've seen homicides decrease by 50%. Right now, there are 18 less homicides. The same time last year in January, we have 18 less homicides than we did before. It's 19 compared to 37 from last year. We still have work to do. We would love that number to be 0, but we know right now that's not realistic. But we'll take whatever win we can get when we're talking about saving lives. Shootings are down 50%. We have 59 less shootings than we had at this time last year. We're down 65 shooting victims. Robberies, we're down over 200 robberies this year for a reduction of about 30%. Vehicular hijackings, 67 less for a reduction of 60%. Last year at this time, there were over 2,000 motor vehicle thefts. Right now, we've cut that number in half to 50%. 1,000 vehicles stolen within 25 days is still a lot of vehicles, and we still have work to do. But when we talk about 1,000 as compared to 2,000, it shows progress, and it says that we're moving in the right direction. Right now, in the city, we have reduced violent crimes by a total of 431 events so far this year. So we're going to continue to move in the right direction. I do appreciate the work from the commission, because the goals that we set together, I think, is going to help move the city forward and get to the root of public safety. So thank you again for the work that you did with us and working with us and my team. I'd like to thank Sarah Boyle, she's sitting right there, and Dana O'Malley for the work that they did on this. And just remember this, I know you thank me for making myself available and mentioning how busy I am. This is the city of Chicago. I took this job. I know it's busy. I know it's going to be busy. And when it comes to keeping this city safe and making sure that we're providing the best possible officers that we can, I will always be available. Thank you. I'm sorry. It's one thing I forgot to say. I accept the goals. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent Snelling. Are there any questions for the superintendent or comments from anyone on the commission?
Sorry. All right, much better.
I did not see you walk in. For the purposes of, for the record and quorum, Vice President Oswaldo Gomez is present.
Cool. Disregard my previous 2 votes then, because maybe I need I needed to be put on the record before that. But thank you so much for your leadership. We've definitely seen the change in working with you, and we're very thankful for your commitment, for the way that you engage with us. I think this is a common mostly for the community, and this is something that I've heard a lot of input from community members about. But I want to be clear that the goals are something that at the end of the day, at least in my perspective, sets parameters for a yearly evaluation and doesn't necessarily mean that we solve every issue permanently. One of the things that I've heard immense amount of feedback on is the first goal related to crime fighting, the deliverable for training and making sure that officers understand and demonstrate the difference between constitutional traffic stops and unconstitutional pretextual stops. This is something that I think has been a big issue in the city, and I think something that a lot of people have a lot of concerns for. And I'm sure that this is something that everyone here has put in a lot of time and effort to deal with. But I'm curious just to know, I know that the goals are something that we will evaluate a year from now or in about 11 months from now. Aside from this idea of training and aside from your commitment as an individual and as a leader, what path do you see for us to set more permanent solutions that go beyond just the yearly evaluations? Because neither your role nor these goals will be permanent. And at the end of the day, I think solutions have to be driven towards a future where we don't have to deal with this every year, and not necessarily when we have a great superintendent and a great commission on a yearly basis. I'm sorry that was abstract, but basically my question is, aside from delivering training, what path do you see for us to deal with this issue in a more permanent, concrete way?
I'm sorry, I really couldn't understand.
Oh, I'm sorry.
What was I didn't hear the rest.
So this is related to traffic stops. The deliverable that we made on this first goal related to crime fighting strategy says that your office will deliver a plan to make sure that training is clear so that officers can understand the difference between constitutional and unconstitutional stops. I think that's a great starting place, but do you see any future or what is a path that you might see for us to work together? And this is not supposed to be like a gotcha, by the way. I just want the community to understand that this is a first step, but this is not something that might not necessarily be solved with just one goal.
No, that's a very, very fair question. When we talk about traffic stops, and I know pretextual traffic stops, constitutional traffic stops, a pretextual traffic stop can be constitutional. The problem with it is this: if we're using minor issues simply to stop a person, to look for other things, that's problematic. The difference is when we talk about a pretextual traffic stop, we know we have a lot of vehicles that are stolen. And there are things that can give us signs, or there are indicators that will tell us that that vehicle is possibly stolen, which when an officer then pulls that vehicle over, that is rooted in reasonable suspicion, and that officer is doing an investigation. Now, if that officer finds out that this is not a stolen vehicle, then we should leave it where it is. And what I mean is that officer at that point can make a decision to allow that person to move on. But in that instance, an ISR, an investigatory stop report, should be completed to demonstrate the reasonable suspicion for stopping the vehicle. What we should not be doing is using traffic stops simply as a crime fighting strategy. That's not what we should be doing. So the training that our officers will be getting is training to help our officers recognize when to make a traffic stop, the fact that traffic stop is rooted in reasonable suspicion, probable cause based on constitutionality. There will be a focus on that. When our officers, and what we're doing right now, because I have researched the traffic stops that we've done over the past 2 months. And over those past 2 months, we have seen a decrease in traffic stops, but what we've seen is an increase in productivity. So what it tells me is that our officers, and gun recoveries, things of that nature, what it tells me is that our officers are not simply stopping people, and it's not a guessing game. What our officers are doing is they're recognizing when there's reasonable suspicion for a crime, the belief that a crime has occurred, is about to occur, or someone is in the commission of a crime, or probable cause that a crime has been committed, and more likely than not, the person that they're stopping has committed the crime. And that would always be based on information gathered by that officer. So what we're seeing now, we're seeing officers who are making traffic stops that are constitutional, and we're seeing more gains from those traffic stops than we saw before. So we don't want to just have our officers out there stopping people and playing a guessing game. So we're going to continue to do that, and we're going to continue to research how these traffic stops are being made.
Thank you.
Superintendent, with officer wellness being so important, how are you taking care of yourself?
That's a good question.
As you model it for your entire department.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I took a nap on the way here. I don't know how you guys on the north side do it. This traffic is crazy. But well, what I will tell you is when I can get a little sleep in, I do. I have to get back to the gym. That's the important part. And I have to eat a little better. However, once I get settled in, once I get the team in place, I'll be able to take care of myself a little better. But right now, I'm willing to make the sacrifices that I have to make to get everything on track, to get our officers on track, because they're the ones out there facing these situations. They're the ones out there who are trying to keep the city safe. They're the ones facing the danger. So it's important for me to make sure that not only do I set the example, but I set a stage for these officers so that they can be successful.
I just want to really underscore one part of these goals that I think is really a step in the right direction that I think is pretty underrated. And I think that's the empowerment of district commanders and the other sort of mid-level managers, if you will, of the police department to be held accountable. That's something I've noticed in the corporate world is key to having something go from an idea at the top to being translated on the ground. I think it applies here as well. I remember vividly talking to a sergeant in one of my ride-alongs, and I asked him, do you feel that you have the power to raise up your best officers and punish the officers that are not behaving according to standard? And he said no. And I think that this is a really strong step in the right direction for that, and kind of a maybe less talked about aspect of these goals that's going to go into effect, but something that I think will be really pivotal. I don't know if you want to say anything more about that, but just a comment.
Yeah, just real quick. We have people who are supervisors. We have exempt rank members who are commanders, who are deputy chiefs, who are chiefs. If we do not empower supervisors to do their jobs, then we're failing our leadership. It's very important that when we have a supervisor, that supervisor understands the responsibility. And then we have to support the supervisors when they see wrongdoing and they want to correct it and take corrective action. We have to support them. Just like when they're out there and they need to educate officers, when they need to lead officers. Again, if we're not providing the leadership for our leaders and we're not developing them, we're also failing. So when we talk about our district commanders, it is extremely important that when we give someone something as important as a district, because that district could make up several wards in a community, several aldermen that the district commander has to talk to and deal with their constituencies. It is very important that we empower them to go out, make decisions, because what affects one district may not affect another. They have to have that autonomy in order to be successful.
Superintendent Snelling, I just want to first say that it's refreshing to hear you speak. I feel that I hear ownership in this vision and the goals, and it's just refreshing. I mean, I won't belabor the bar was set pretty low last year, but you've definitely cleared it. I have one question that I debated about whether asking, but the defense intern in me the defense attorney in me won't let it go. You had mentioned earlier that officers are able to notice things about cars that could indicate that they were stolen for the purpose of pulling them over. I was just curious if you could give us a few examples of what that is.
Okay, can you, what was the last part?
Window being busted?
A few examples of what about a car's appearance or whatever. I don't want to limit it to appearance. You had said that officers are able to see things that would determine whether or not they're more likely to be stolen or not in deciding when to pull somebody over. I was hoping maybe you could give us a few examples of what those things are.
Well, there are several things: broken windows, damaged door locks, unhinged doors. Those are indicators of a vehicle that may have been broken into or it could possibly be stolen. But there are also other things. There are calls over the radio where a crime may have occurred. We have a description of a vehicle, damage to a vehicle, vehicles that have been involved in a hit and run. Those are the things that are important that people need to understand, that officers may be armed with that information. And when they pull someone over, it's important that if it turns out that the vehicle isn't stolen, that the officer explains to each individual why they pulled them over at the time. There are a lot of times that officers have information, lawful information that can be used as reasonable suspicion to stop a vehicle. And if it turns out that it's not the vehicle, those officers should explain why they pulled the vehicle over, and they should complete the investigatory stop report, which is documentation of why they pulled that vehicle over.
I just have a comment to make. First of all, I think that Superintendent, you and Commissioners Brown and Driver did an absolute excellent job on these goals. And the reason I say it is because every goal that you set is a goal that I heard from the community throughout the superintendent search process. Person after person after person stepped up to the mic and talked about the various things that are included in the goal setting this year. And I'm proud of CCPSA and CPD for listening to the community and setting goals that actually address issues that community members have repeatedly identified as being the most important to them. That being said, I know that having been up here for more than a year, we frequently have community members that send us emails or sign up for public comment, and they keep us honest on those goals that really impact community. So I make this comment to keep us honest on your goal with respect to officer wellness, which is an issue that myself and Commissioner Gomez and Commissioner Driver spent a lot of time focusing on this year. I just want to underscore that it is my great hope that in Q1, we get feedback from you about improvements in the working conditions in the facilities for CPD officers. At our wellness meeting, we had a sergeant from the 11th district, I think that was his rank, who came and gave us a very detailed description of some of the things that they deal with on a daily basis, including human waste coming from the ceilings. No one should be expected to work in those conditions. It's an issue that is not going to get brought up monthly at our meetings because police officers don't tend to come unless if they have to. But I really am hoping that in Q1 and in the subsequent quarters that we are consistently hearing updates that there has been progress on that particular goal. I think it's extremely important for wellness overall, and I think it's extremely important for the commission to demonstrate that we are in fact supporting goals related to officer wellness.
And thank you for that. And that is really important. And I will tell you right now that I'm in constant contact with that particular district commander. There are a few more districts that have issues that we need to address, but that particular district is #1 on the list to make sure that we get those officers some help. Are there any other questions? Because I just want to say one last thing before I go. I just want to say thank you to the commission, because it's been extremely refreshing that all of you have done your research. One of the things that I sometimes get frustrated with is that someone will read an article, or they will look at data, and they will automatically draw conclusions as to what police officers are doing or should be doing. And without understanding the lived experience of these officers and what they face and what they see on a daily basis, so it's impossible to judge just based on that information. But what I realize about everyone sitting up here is that you've done your research, and based on that research, we were able to come to an agreement on these goals. And you found that the things that were important to me, that were important to our officers, and important to our community members and the safety of our city. And we were able to get this down on paper and agree to it. So I just want to say thank you to every one of you up here for doing the research and just coming to the table with an open mind and making sure that we're doing things the right way. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent Snelling. So I will take a point of privilege just to make a quick comment on this process. Speaking from the perspective of a person who worked to pass this ordinance for about 5 years, and thinking about this coming full circle, this is something that predates my existence. It's a fight in Chicago, that goes back to 1973. So it started about 51 years ago that people started pushing for civilian oversight. And when this thing passed, there were a lot of city council folks, articles, officers, community members who were really upset. And it was really a moment where it felt like, sort of the sky would fall. Is this going to be is this commission's existence and the district council's existence going to negatively impact public safety? And to be honest, it's like a startup. We started this thing and we had one person. It was Adam Gross, was the only employee. And we really didn't know which direction this thing was going to go. And you hear a lot of times that Chicago has the strongest civilian oversight in the country. One, that's not true, but we like to repeat that line. That distinction actually belongs to the city of Detroit. But Chicago was almost last in getting civilian oversight. The city of Oakland, city of Columbus, Ohio, the city of Detroit, it goes on and on and on. The city of Joliet has a police and fire board. So we were actually late to the party here. And to hear Superintendent Snelling stand up and say in the month of January, 50% decreases, 30% decreases, that to me is a significant accomplishment. And I don't think that stuff gets highlighted enough. We are losing far too many people in the city of Chicago. Many times there's, as I've said over and over, there's folks on one side of the aisle or the other side of the aisle. But I'm very, very, very pleased to hear that things are going in the right direction. I can't say enough about Chief Administrator Kirsten. Thank you, President Cooper. Thank you, former President Guion Foreman. Thank you, Superintendent Snelling. The collaboration that we've been able to have together and working with our district council members, a number of whom are present, I think is really setting a precedent. This is a new year. We're in the process of selecting a new commission. The district council members will do their work, as well as the city council and the mayor, and selected a new commission. But just wanted to say that I'm very proud of the work that's been done in the last year and a half since this new project for the city of Chicago has come into existence. And so I would sincerely like to thank not only all of you, but also our staff who really work around the clock to make this happen. So just wanted to say that. Is there a motion on the proposed goals for the police superintendent?
In accordance with MCC 2-80-050E, I move to adopt the 2023 goals for the police superintendent and deliver them to the superintendent.
Who said that? Oswaldo? Commissioner Brown has moved to adopt the 2024 goals. I think she meant to say 2024. She said 2023. Goals for the police superintendent and deliver them to him. It's been seconded by Commissioner Gomez. Is there any debate on the motion? Hearing none, we'll now move to a vote. Those in favor of adopting a motion to to adopt the 2024 goals for the police superintendent and deliver them to him, please signify by saying aye. Are there any opposed? The ayes have it and the motion carries. The 2024 goals for the police superintendent have been adopted and will be delivered. Our next order of business will be reports and updates. We'll begin with an update regarding policy from Commissioner Terry. Oh, sorry. Where's that? What else? Yeah, we're on 18. We're on 18.
At our November meeting, the commission voted to approve the revisions to the Chicago Police Department policy G08-03 titled Prohibition on Criminal and Biased Organizations. The revised policy outlines the prohibited behaviors, membership, and association with bias-based and criminal organizations for Chicago police officers. The 60-day mayoral review period specified in the ordinance ended on January 12th. And as of today, the policy is now in effect for the Chicago Police Department. We are eager to see how it is implemented, and we will update the community as this policy is implemented. During the G08-03 policy development and feedback process, Commissioner Loizon and I received a lot of thoughtful feedback and input, and there are several additional revisions that community members identified to strengthen this policy even further. We are pursuing those additions, and we look forward to continuing to develop and push forward policies that improve the impact of public safety for Chicagoans. We encourage community input and feedback.
Thank you, Commissioner Terry. Do any commissioners have any questions or comments for her? Seeing no further questions or comments, we will now move to our next update, which I will pass to Vice President Gomez to give.
Thank you, everyone. And I'll be brief because I know we're all cold. I want to start by thanking everyone on the commission and by being transparent that in recent months, I've seen a shift in my capacity due to my professional and personal life changing in a lot of ways. This has made it very hard, especially for Commissioner Driver, because he's had to pick up a lot of the work that we used to do jointly. That means attending meetings, having to do a lot of assessments, and having to interact with a lot of the stakeholders that we usually interact with, the two of us as partners. I want to thank him for picking up that work. But I think because I've made a commitment to be a good leader, I'm going to own that commitment and say that it's time for me to step down as vice president, not as commissioner. Simply because I think it's important that Commissioner Driver and the rest of the commission have as much help as they can get and has as much support as necessary. I plan on finishing my term, and I plan on doing so with a lot of focus and a lot of attention to all the work that's ahead. But I know that there's great work that still needs to be done, and I hope that the Commissioner Driver gets the best person and the most help, because it's only fair to him, and because this is something that we meant to do together. And if I'm not as available as I said I would be, I think the right thing to do is to step back and let someone else take my place. So that's it. Given that update, I think we'll still at some point this night give nominations for someone to replace me, and it'll be for the remainder of our term as the interim commission. But it's been great, and I've had an incredible journey working with amazing people, meeting amazing colleagues, and really just I'm so grateful for the opportunity that was offered to me. I never, as President Driver, I never imagined how far we would move in just 1 year, because the fight to create the commission took a long time. And we still have a lot of work to do. But I think the future is bright, and I'm very confident in everyone that's sitting on these three tables that we can get a lot of work done still.
Thank you, Commissioner Gomez. I would also like to thank him for his leadership. Thank you for everything you've done for the commission over the past year and a half. Thank you for your work going back to when we were trying to pass the ordinance. We were go back to the CPAC and GAPA days before it became one coalition, now known as ECPS. So I would just sincerely like to thank you. It was a lot of work initially trying to get this thing off the ground before we had staff, which meant that a lot of that work was done manually by commissioners. And in our role as president and vice president, a lot of that work fell on us. So I would just want to say that I really appreciate you and thank you. And also thank you for being a leader who recognizes that your capacity has now changed and that a change may be warranted. So I do really appreciate you. Commissioner Gomez's resignation from the position of vice president creates a vacancy in that position. According to the commission's bylaws, commissioners host elections for the role of president and vice president every 2 years or whenever there's an officer vacancy. Officer elections are held during regularly scheduled commission meetings. The commission elects a president and vice president by a majority vote. Nominations for the election of officers are made at the regular meeting immediately preceding the meeting at which elections are to take place. The term of president and vice president shall commence on the date of their election and shall end upon the date when their successors have been elected. With that said, it gives me great pleasure and it's a distinct honor to nominate someone who I've worked alongside with. Specifically, she's a person who I got really close with during the superintendent search. She is a person who I trust. She is from the wrong side of town. The absolute wrong side of town. But I'm really, really grateful for her and her leadership. And I would like to nominate Commissioner Ramel Terry for the role of Vice President. Commissioner Terry, do you accept?
I don't know, you being shady. West side, the best side. Yes, I accept.
Are there any other nominations from are there any nominations from any other commissioners? Commissioner Terry has been nominated to be Vice President of the Community Commission for Public Safety and Accountability. The vote to elect a new Vice President will take place at the Commission's next regularly scheduled meeting that will take place on February 29th. Now we will move on to miscellaneous business. Right now, Chicago has taken another big step forward in community-driven policing and public safety. Applications to serve on the Permanent Community Commission for Public Safety and Accountability are open now through February 7th, 2024 at noon. To find more information on the required application material, please visit the CCPSA website. As always, you can follow us on all social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube. Facebook is Chicago CCPSA, Instagram and Twitter are Chicago_CCPSA. Oh, sorry, CCPSA_Chicago. Just type it in, you'll find us, I promise. CCPSA. On January 30th at the JLM Center, we will have, at 6:30 p.m., we'll have our second superintendent forum. We're required to have 4 by law. We thought it appropriate to be really intentional about those superintendent forums. We had to have those prior to this election. We had to have 1 before city council confirmation, and now we're required to have 4. So we had our first at the Employee Tax Center in Chinatown, which it was a great turnout. I was very pleased with that. We offered live translation in Mandarin and Cantonese. The next one will be at JLM, and we're focusing that specific one, although it's open to all community members, is focused on violence intervention and advocacy groups and the reentry community. We'll have another one that will be on the north side that's focused on folks with disabilities or disability advocates. So we really have connected with a lot of those groups and asked them to step up and recommend a place for us to have that meeting and to make sure that meeting is catered to them. Although, again, these meetings are open to the public, we encourage you to come. As a commission, we think it's important to reach out to every constituency in the city, and we'll do our best to keep finding folks who may not necessarily be engaged with this work, but who we think are extremely important and eager to be engaged. And lastly, on February 8th, 6:30 p.m. at the Arc of St. Sabina, that address is 1210 West 78th Place. We will be having a special hearing on acoustic gunshot detection, also known as ShotSpotter. I would encourage you all to come out to that hearing. That contract, as of now, is set to expire on February 16th. That decision ultimately lies with the mayor of the city of Chicago, but we will be having a hearing on this matter where we will have experts from the community, experts in sound detection. We will have a representative from Sound Thinking, which is the company that owns ShotSpotter. And we'll have folks from law enforcement there as well. And would encourage you all to come out and have your voice heard. Is there any further business before the commission or any announcement or comments from commissioners?
Actually, can I make a quick comment? This is not related to anything coming up, but one of the really powerful things about this commission is that the community has a lot of say in what issues we take on or what things we have conversations about or what narratives we engage in. And I think the ShotSpotter meeting is one of those examples, right? So there might be an issue that everyone here might be, not thinking about now, but that might become something that we are not addressing yet. And you all have the power through signature and petition gathering to bring that issue up to us, but also for us to have a conversation about. So I think that's a little known power or check on the commission that we have. And I encourage everyone to continue to think about what issues might be important, because policing and safety are so much more than just the things that we talk about during our regular meetings. So there's opportunities for us to continue having great conversations and to learn, because there's a lot of things that everyone here still has, to learn about.
I also have a quick comment, and that is just a shout out to district councils for all the work that you're doing to engage community in a variety of ways. And as the representative faith leader up here, I want you to remember that faith communities are a great way to be able to talk to people kind of en masse. And so the 19th district counselors, which is where my church is located, came to our church. They were able to make an announcement during church, and then we did a lunch forum afterward, and they had a number of people that attended, and they made a great presentation, and really good conversation happened. And I think everybody left feeling like they knew so much more about what district councils were about. So don't forget about your faith communities. Even if you're not attached to a faith community, you can still reach out and offer to come and do a presentation. And I think if you need help, like in a certain part of the city, I can certainly connect you to a bunch of different faith leaders that I know would be honored and would love to have district counselors come and do that. So just some encouragement.
Thank you, Pastor Beth. Hearing Commissioner Beth Brown, I don't think there's anything else before this body. No further business before the commission's meeting is now adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Right.
Now I can put on my coat. Who has Kleenex? Oh, yes. Anybody have Kleenex? All this sniffling. I'm like, I'm looking in this bag. The one thing I don't have.
I don't believe I will have Kleenex.
I just didn't want to leave the word. Oh, yeah.
No, I wouldn't.